All right, so this is going to be the first in a series of videos that I'm releasing, detailing what I'm calling the 13 vibrational levels of consciousness, or you could consider them like permission access levels. Before getting into each of these specific levels, I just want to briefly explain what I mean by vibrational level. What that is a phase of consciousness that determines how much power a person can safely access. The phase you're in depends upon how you interpret reality, where you locate authority, and how much influence you can safely wield. The levels describe a progression in which each phase produces the realizations needed to enter the next. People can operate at different levels in different areas of their lives, so the map describes the structure operating within the particular experience of each stage. So I decided that I would use song lyrics throughout these videos to identify the levels because song lyrics often capture the internal experience of a level pretty precisely. In the lower level songs give people a way to relate to problems, desires, and emotional structures organizing their lives, even when they may have not conceptualized those structures directly. But as consciousness rises, the meaning conveyed through songs can become increasingly explicit and direct, as you'll see when we get to levels 5, 6, and 7. At those points, the songs can sometimes express a realization or experience with remarkable precision, mostly because of the way very popular, well, the way songwriters write their lyrics in general. And that's something I'll get deeper into in the future. At any rate, using song lyrics is useful for showing what each level feels like from within it. Uh, which problem defines it, and which realization begins moving you beyond it. For the full explanation of how the map works and why it contains 13 levels, strongly recommend checking out the introductory video. So this map here begins with the first level of self-reflective human consciousness, which is essentially you know that you exist, not worrying about animal consciousness or anything like that. If you can recognize yourself as existing, that's what we're talking about. Here's the first level. In this first level, you know that you exist, but you have some feeling of inadequacy, insufficiency, or belief in yourself as powerless. In the taxonomic version of the levels, the taxonomic version is something I'm going to create afterwards. This version is the experiential explanation of like how I perceived the ascent as it happened. So the experiential version isn't going to be as identical to the taxonomic. This is just like my own interpretation of what it was like as I was sort of moving up the rungs. So in the taxonomic version of the levels, this first level won't be called powerlessness, but given we're inside this service to self pyramid structure, powerlessness is just a very common place most people start, since the elites at the top have so much money and power, while the majority of the rest of everybody else is at the bottom and has little of either. So powerlessness doesn't mean that you're like physically incapable of acting. You may work, socialize, consume, react, pursue relief, and make ordinary decisions. The problem is that your internal state is being determined by forces you can't consciously govern. Your activity remains downstream of pain, compulsion, fear, other people, and whatever temporarily changes how you feel. There's two songs I found that describe this level very well. The first is Evanescence, Bring Me to Life, and the second is Tovlo's Habits. The Bring Me to Life version is kind of an extreme degree of this, but I just thought it fit it pretty well. And I'm not going to go into the full entire lyrics. I've just picked like certain sections that I thought detailed it pretty well. So pick these two parts of it. The first part goes, "How can you see into my eyes like open doors, leading you down into my core where I've become so numb?" And then the second part goes, "Wake me up inside, call my name and save me from the dark. Bid my blood to run before I come undone. Save me from the nothing I've become." So, like I said, that's like a pretty extreme version of it. Most people probably won't feel this, though. A lot of people probably may have felt that at different parts of their lives, for small periods. The significant part about these lyrics is that she feels so powerless that she needs someone else to rescue her from that powerlessness, because she doesn't see any way out at all. So she feels transparent to others that anyone can see through her, since even hiding the idea that she has no power also seems to her to be impossible. And as I've said, this is like an extreme degree of powerlessness. Um, the key point of level one is that you feel so helpless that you're waiting for something external to change in order for you to even like have a chance to be anything or to make anything of your life. And existentially, your external circumstances make you feel so unfulfilled, and you can see no way out of it. From the singer's perspective, she can't even seem to like make her own blood move, and she's unraveling to the point of coming undone. So, in a general sense, almost everyone can probably point to a moment in their life when they felt like this. When you get to the cusp between levels 6 and 7, you'll certainly experience this, but we'll get that. We'll address that when we get there. Um, Levels 2 through 6 are essentially successive attempts to resolve this initial powerlessness. You first recognize what's made you feel powerless. That's what happens at level 2. Then you'll spend lifetimes trying to overcome it through effort and achievement. Then you'll realize that that can't get you there either. Then you move into right action and integrity, and eventually you discover that none of these routes has any path to real fulfillment. Regardless, this is the unconscious experience of what life's like on Earth. That is, unless you have this map that I created that's going to show you how to get out of it. Well, maybe not show you how to get out of it, but it's going to explain how it all happens. Underneath the attempts from levels 2 through 6, it's always some sort of mistaken belief about yourself. Either that you're inadequate in some way, that you have some insufficiency that needs to be fixed, that you're unable to alter your circumstances, or just in some way you are incomplete as you presently are. The journey from level 1 to level 7 is a process through which that premise is progressively exhausted until you directly experience that you were already whole. These were just mistaken beliefs. So if you want the deductive logic behind that conclusion, you can watch the first video I made that called the Framework of Reality. So the second song that I chose here was this Tovlo Habits, and there's a bunch of parts from it that could fit. We'll just stick with talking about this one here that goes, "You're gone, and I gotta stay high all the time to keep you off my mind. Trying to forget you, I fall back down. I gotta stay high all my life to forget I'm missing you." So yeah, there's like a less severe version of level 1 that probably more people can relate to. Regardless what activities any of us engage in to avoid the feeling of powerlessness, we all have something that we'll turn to just avoid it. On the surface, her experience, her perspective, it looks more active. She's choosing. There's other parts of the song where she chooses like substances, nightlife, food, sex, and other types of stimulation just to avoid forgetting or to avoid having to think about what she doesn't want to think about anymore. What she doesn't want to think about is missing. Um, the thing is, none of these choices that she's making are free. Every choice is it's being dictated by the need to prevent contact with an internal condition that she can't tolerate. The absent relationship still governs her behavior because everything she does is organized around escaping its emotional effect. Anytime you're like drinking to escape or doom scrolling or burying your face in your phone or the TV to avoid life, you're essentially doing the same thing. The stimulation functions as just a distraction. So she's saying she can't be alone with herself without feeling pain, so she continually alters her state through some external means. The behavior creates motion without restoring agency, so she can choose among several forms of escape, but she cannot yet choose whether escape will govern her. That distinction also explains why these lyrics can describe the condition without already belonging to level 2. You can know the immediate reason for an action, like "I stay high to keep you off my mind," while remaining entirely inside the premise that makes the action necessary. She recognizes that she's in avoidance, but she has not yet recognized the deeper mechanism that has led to the avoidance. Naming the trigger, it's not the same as seeing the reason behind the trigger. So in Bring Me to Life and Habits, they describe two versions of the same sort of arrangement. In Bring Me to Life, you need something external to bring you to life. In the second, you need something external to prevent you from becoming fully conscious of the reasons behind your pain. One seeks external activation, the other seeks anesthesia. In both cases, you lack direct authority over your own internal state. So that's the first level. Okay, so level 2 is an even number, and even number levels are recognition levels. This odd even pattern continues upwards until level 10, where something strange happens, but I'll explain that when we get there. Until then, it'll be easy to notice this odd even pattern. Level 2 begins when you become capable of observing the condition that previously contained you. In level 2, the recognition of the mistaken premise comes into understanding. You can identify the external pressure, internal pattern, or repeated contradiction governing your experience. Recognition, however, does not immediately produce freedom. You can understand why you're suffering while remaining psychologically, materially, or behaviorally organized around the same pattern. Level 2 establishes the distinction required for change. It doesn't yet supply the power or method to make that change. So the two songs I found that explain this level quite well are Linkin Park's Numb and NF's Happy. Numb identifies the external conditions through which your identity can become suppressed. Happy identifies the internal attachment through which that condition continues after it has become familiar. So we're not going through the full entire songs, we're just addressing little snippets from each. So the first part I picked from Numb goes, I'm tired of being what you want me to be, feeling so faithless, lost under the surface, don't know what you're expecting of me, put under the pressure of walking in your shoes. Every step that I take is another mistake to you. So the opening describes what happens when your behavior becomes organized around someone else's expectations. Every action is measured against an externally imposed identity. So even your attempts to satisfy that identity produce another experience of failure. Your own identity hasn't disappeared, but has been buried underneath the version of yourself that you've been trying to perform. At level one, you experience the numbness without clearly understanding its structure. At level two, you recognize the relationship between the numbness and the pressure producing it. Then I found this other section from Numb that goes, I've become so numb, I can't feel you there. Become so tired, so much more aware. I'm becoming this when all I want to do is be more like me and be less like you. So he recognizes that becoming what someone else wanted requires losing contact with himself. Wanting to become more like me means he can finally recognize that his identity exists separately from the expectations governing him. This is the service to self conditioned expression of level two. You've given authority over your own movement to someone or something else, and finally begin to see how parental pressure, education, religion, social approval, romantic approval, duty, or shame taught you to live through an externally constructed identity. Recognizing that authority doesn't immediately remove its influence, but it makes the structure visible. So numb represents the outward facing recognition of level two. In the instance of numb, an external will has shaped your identity. A general note I have to anybody is you can't ever live your life for someone else without creating serious problems for yourself. The reasons for this are going to be clear as we cover higher levels, but I'll say a few things about this at this point. In Chester Bennington's case, given the lyrics expressed as the childhood desire for parental approval. As a child, it's no big deal, but as one grows older, if your entire life becomes structured around the approval of others, you give up your own capacity to live your life as your own. This level two thing expresses in all sorts of ways. It can express as people pleasing, where you feel personally inadequate or incomplete without the approval of others, so you continually put yourself out just so that others respond to you favorably. Eventually, other people's preferences become the organizing authority over your identity and behavior rather than your own. Can also express as subordination. In this kind of case, you may lack confidence in the value of your own direction, so you surrender present agency in the hope that an authority figure will eventually recognize your value and reward you with a promotion. Eventually, that person's judgment, their judgment, determines how you spend your time, apply your abilities, and measure your own progress. It can also express as like chronic financial support. So sometimes, like you might feel guilt or fear of abandonment or the need to feel indispensable can make your value become dependent upon keeping another person secure. Eventually, their stability becomes the organizing purpose of your labor while your own direction remains perpetually deferred. Can also express a sacrifice. So, like, you can surrender your own time, opportunities, or desires so that another person can benefit. And then, in some cases, you might expect their eventual gratitude, loyalty, or reciprocation to make the sacrifice meaningful. Eventually, when you do this, your life becomes organized around an implicit debt. Sort of like, I gave this up for you, so you must someday prove that giving it up was worthwhile. Or even if it's not about receiving anything, the more you live your life this way, the more you just end up regretting it. And people who have midlife crises are the ones who live their lives primarily for others. Then they get to the halfway point, then they feel like they haven't been living at all because their life up to that point has not felt like their own. So all of these contain the same tacit admission of powerlessness. You lack a direction you regard as sufficiently valuable to organize your life around, so another person supplies a borrowed direction. Your purpose, value, and eventual fulfillment are then placed in the hands of someone who can never return the portion of your life spent serving them. So moving forward now, NF's happy turns the recognition inward. It shows what happens after a painful state has lasted long enough that your identity begins organizing itself around it. So I picked these lyrics from the song. They go, I'm too proud to open up and ask you to pick me up and pull me out this hole I'm trapped in. The truth is, I need help, but I just can't imagine who I'd be if I was happy. Yeah, I've been this way so long, it feels like something's off when I'm not depressed. Got issues that I won't address, some baggage I ain't open yet, got some demons I should put to rest, got some traumas that I can't forget. So the central line is that he can't imagine who he'd be if the suffering disappeared. His present identity was formed inside the condition he wants to escape. So leaving that condition would also require overcoming the issues that have been keeping him in the powerless state. You'll repeatedly return to level 2 as you deal with different problems in your life. When you're in the type of avoidance NF is in and happy, you'll stay stuck in levels 1 and 2 until you finally decide to face whatever issues are holding you back. So even if you can recognize that your current state's destroying you, the negative external circumstances leading to the depression will keep repeating until you're finally ready to put an end to it. The fact that something feels wrong when he's not depressed reveals how thoroughly the condition can become normalized. The unopened baggage explains how this baseline maintains itself. NF can identify the unresolved issues, trauma, and avoided material, but identifying them is not the same as processing them. He has enough distance to inventory the structure, but is not enough movement to reorganize it. Happy adds that external pressure may explain how you lost contact with your power. The resulting condition can eventually become self-maintaining. You adapt to the pain, build an identity inside it, and then experience the unknown beyond it as a threat to continuity. Level 2 is where you finally see this contradiction. You cannot continue living in the familiar condition, but you don't yet know how to exist outside it. The next few levels are the general tendency that most of us unconsciously move towards as we continue to ignore those issues. So that's it for level 2. So this is level 3. Level 3 is an odd number, and odd numbers levels are experiential. So level 2 gave you recognition. Level 3 is where that recognition can produce level 3 is where movement past the prior recognition occurs. So the two songs I chose are first is Nefx's Hope for the beginning stages of level 3, and Eminem's Lose Yourself for its later stages. So in level 3, you decide to force your way out of your powerlessness through action. And everything in these first 6 is all about overcoming this complete powerlessness of level 1. So in level 3, you try to become stronger, better, more disciplined, more successful, more accomplished, or more worthy. Uh, Without completely resolving those levels, um, we can often think that everything will be fine once we just get this promotion or some partner or just something that we're waiting to accomplish in life that will make the pain from the powerlessness irrelevant. The underlying assumption is that your present self lacks something that a future version of you will possess. And this is where the idea of Camus' myth of Sisyphus becomes relevant. So in Camus' myth, Sisyphus is condemned to push a rock up a hill, only for it to roll back down each time he gets to the top. Then, with nothing else to do but roll the rock back up the hill again. So level 3 follows a similar structure. Whenever completion is assigned to becoming, you work towards the point where you expect to feel successful, secure, or worthy, but the standard moves as you approach it. So when you achieve something that may be real, but once you finally reach it, you'll eventually find that another condition just takes its place. So in Hope, Nefex encourages the listener to become their way out of the hole NF described that he was trapped in the explanation in level 2. So these lyrics are pretty self-explanatory. They just go, keep striving, keep trying. Nothing's in your way but yourself. Don't need nobody's help. You can make it through this hell. Take it one step at a time. One step as you climb. If you fail, you'll be fine. Get back up to the grind and never lose sight of your mission. I mean, I think that's generally pretty good advice. Um, but you'll see the limitations of it as I move forward. So these lyrics, they don't really require an explanation or a breakdown. These lines explain the basic premise of level 3. The level 1 experience of yourself is nothing, and the level 2 recognition that you want to move past it to make your life better, they're both still present. But here we imagine that we can become something and then rely on that hope to make the distance between those conditions seem crossable. So this is a genuine improvement over level 2. That's why I said it's generally good advice. because hope tries to help you restore agency. So instead of remaining inside the pain you've recognized, you begin organizing your life around changing it. The pain now gives you a reason to move, but the original judgment remains intact. You still accept yourself as nothing, and becoming something later is the presumed answer to that problem. Your worth is placed at the end of a process and made conditional upon reaching it. That's why I equate it to Sisyphus. When exerting all the effort to roll the rock up the hill, there's no time to think about the pain. All there is to think about is getting to the top. And this literally applies to any endeavor where the purpose of the endeavor is to fill a personal void. As long as effort's being used to resolve a belief in your present inadequacy, the pain is easier to ignore because you just presume with enough effort, there's some point in the future that becoming what you want to be will make you feel whole. So then I found this lyric section from Eminem's Lose Yourself that goes, Souls escaping through this hole that is gaping. This world's mine for the taking. Make me king as we move toward a new world order. A normal life's boring, but superstardom's close to post-mortem. It only grows harder. All right, so my interpretation of that is, uh, in fact, that first line, it might be a quadruple entendre, but we're just going to stick to the one interpretation that makes sense for my purposes here. The gaping hole is the same original sufficiency from level one, that inner absence that made becoming feel necessary. So in level three, Eminem converts that pain into art using rap both to express what was trapped inside him and escape the circumstances associated with it. But his soul is still escaping even after he has come as far as he has. His success has changed his circumstances without filling the hole that drove him towards success. Art, art has turned into both the expression of his soul and the channel through which he continues fleeing the original wound. The line therefore captures the central level three problem. Becoming can carry you remarkably far while leaving intact the insufficiency that made you believe you needed to become something else in the first place. So he began at the bottom of this service to self pyramid, just like the rest of us, where he experienced poverty, obscurity, and powerlessness. Why he experienced those things were the initial thing that drove him, and then his idea that becoming king is what he thought could resolve it. And he says, "This world's mine for the taking," and that expresses the return of agency. But his agency in this case, it's only understood through conquest. When he says, "Make me king," that enlarges the goal from escaping his circumstances to establishing himself as above everyone else. The New World Order is the hierarchy reorganized around his ascendance. He's no longer accepting the initial powerlessness, and he intends to reverse it completely. This advances the previous idea. The gaping hole explains why he began climbing, while kingship is the identity he believes will finally fill it. The final lines reveal that he can already see the cost of the identity he's pursuing. A normal life is boring, but superstardom's close to post-mortem, it only grows harder. So the materialism climb cannot just end once his original circumstances improve. Escaping poverty is it's no longer enough. His sense of meaning has nowhere else to attach to other than exceptional achievement. So an ordinary life at that point feels intolerable, even though ordinary stability may have been what he originally lacked. This idea of superstardom's close to post-mortem recognizes that the highest form of success may require him to spend nearly everything he has to sustain it. The identity meant to save him is approaching the point where it could consume him. It only grows harder, completes the Sisyphus comparison. Ascending the hierarchy has not reduced the effort required. Each higher position brings greater pressure, expectations, and more to defend. He did ultimately obtain almost exactly what these lyrics demanded. He became one of the few rappers who could credibly be called a king, but the achievement reproduced his original powerlessness in another form. He became so famous that ordinary public life became difficult. Everything he did attracted scrutiny, and his position created a continual demand to prove that he still deserved it. It seems even to this day he appears to come off as kind of resentful and needing to keep proving himself over and over. This is just my opinion, but if he instead just made his music about the art itself rather than about needing the art to prove something about himself to the world, the story might likely have it take a different turn. And that'll be clearer when we get to level 5. So, anyways, the experiential endpoint of level 3 is extreme success. And reaching that point is the beginning point of the necessary recognition that comes or that's needed at level 4, which the main point being that you can become exactly what you set out to become and still discover that the climb was organized around a hole that achievement just could not fill. 4 is an even number, even levels are recognition levels. So level 4 begins when the level 3 climb that we last talked about in the last one gets you the result that you thought would resolve the initial insufficiency of the first level. So it's the culmination of achieving wealth, recognition, skill, status, audience, visibility, or whatever end you were aiming for. From inside level 3, we thought that this achievement was supposed to end the feeling of insufficiency from level 1. In level 4, the result arrives and the unresolved thing underneath the striving just becomes louder. So at this point, when you get to this point, you believe reaching the top of the hill would finally bring you peace. Yet what often happens is that even after many people reach the top, they only want more money, more status, greater power, and bigger versions of everything. It ends up becoming like a black hole that just can never be filled. So these two songs that I found that I thought fit this level very well for the early stage, level 4 is Mo Money, Mo Problems, and for the later stage, level 4 is Juice WRLD's Empty Out Your Pockets. So let's look at part of Mace's verse from Mo Money, Mo Problems. Goes, who's hot, who's not? Tell me who rocks, who sells out in the stores. Tell me who flopped, who copped the blue drop, whose jewels got rocks, who's mostly Dolce down to the tube sock, the same old Mace. No, ain't nothing changed but my limp. Can't stop till I see my name on a blimp. Now, whatever you think about all that, there's meaning that's going on here. All right, so my interpretation of that set of lyrics is that Mace is so he's caring about who's hot and who's not, who's selling records and who's flopping, who has the car, jewelry, and designer clothing. And then he says he's the same Mace and nothing's changed but his limp, meaning his money and visibility have changed how he presents himself and moves through the world, but they've not produced the internal transformation that achievement initially appeared to promise. His position changed, the person occupying that position remains the same. But he doesn't yet conclude that achievement can't resolve the reason for wanting all that material stuff in the first place. So instead, the goal just becomes larger. And he says, can't stop till I see my name on a blimp. The success he already has did not create a completion point. So greater visibility becomes the next proposed answer. Selling records, acquiring money, displaying status are just not enough. Now his name must become big enough for everybody to see. And the hook from the song states what happens as the achievement continues expanding. And the lyrics go, I don't know what they want from me. It's like the more money we come across, the more problems we see. So more money and visibility bring real new pressures. Success gives greater power within the external world, but it also makes relationships within that world more complicated. The level 3 premise was that success would end the struggle. Level 4 reveals that success changes the form and scale of the struggle. Money can resolve financial problems and recognition can create opportunities, but neither can resolve an internal sense of insufficiency. All right, so now we're going to move on to Biggie's verse. All right, so this is Biggie's verse from the same song. It goes, federal agents mad because I'm flagrant, tap my cell and the phone in the basement. I be the cat, you see it, all the events, bent gats in holsters, girls on shoulders, Playboy, I told you, mirror mics to me, Bruce too much, I lose too much. Step on stage, the girls boo too much. I guess it's because you run with lame dudes too much. Me lose my touch, never that. If I did, ain't no problem to get the gap. All right, so all right, so my interpretation of those lyrics is he's saying that his success has made him highly visible and his refusal to conceal how he operates has provoked federal surveillance. At that point in his life, Big had become the guy seen at all the major events, surrounded by the rewards of success, but he still carries guns because his background and the position he holds continues to bring danger. And now I'm not trying to turn this into like a historical rap lyric breakdown video, but I am trying to give enough details here that can just so that the point I'm making can become clear. So in the lyric when he says "Playboy, I told you," he was addressing Suge Knight following the 1995 Source Awards, where Suge took the stage to accept Soundtrack of the Year for the Above the Rim movie to take the clout for producing the record, and he subsequently got booed. So for reference, The Source back in '95, that was a major magazine that rated hip hop albums from 1 to 5 mics. So for a record to receive 5 mics meant that it was exceptional. So when he says mere mics to me, that can be read as Big is dismissing those awards and ratings as insignificant measures of his position. And then when he's saying bruise too much, I lose too much. He's saying something along the lines of, I could physically confront you, but for me to get into physical altercations would lead to me losing too much. He's saying he has too much to lose by getting involved in that. So the lines following that refer to Suge and his associates being booed when they took the stage. He's saying when Suge stepped on stage, the audience rejected him anyways. So the final two lines reveal the limitation in the position, though. He insists that he'll never lose his touch on the microphone, but if he ever did, he could return to using his guns. So final lines expose that the specific level 4 limitation, and that's that achievement can resolve some problems, but that resolution will forever remain contingent upon the continued presence of the achievement that produced it. So Biggie no longer needed to rely primarily on weapons because his ability on the microphone supplanted that. Though obviously he still said he's going to these events with guns and holsters, so we can't even be sure how much of that problem actually was resolved. The point is the underlying structure only temporarily changed, if at all. Since, as he said in the lyric, if he loses his touch, which is the condition holding the old problem in suspension, then he has to go right back to using weapons. So you can think about this like professional athletes very frequently experience the same sort of thing. While being under contract supplies income, identity, purpose, status, discipline, and social belonging, those conditions can temporarily resolve the initial inadequacy. However, it's pretty well known that many professional athletes end up going broke a few years after their career ends. Because once it ends, those safeguards that were in place no longer contain the initial problem. And that's the part of the level 4 structure in concentrated form. Success changed Big's available methods of exercising power without changing the premise that power must be maintained. So the struggle was not eliminated by achievement, it was enlarged and reorganized around preserving what achievement created. And that's the level 4 problem. Achievement can transform the scale of your life without transforming the problematic premise from which you built it. If success was pursued as protection against powerlessness, then reaching the top creates a position that must continually be protected and guarded. The late stage level 4 song I chose is Juice WRLD's Empty Out Your Pockets. Biggie's verse was like a mid to late stage level 4 recognition, but Empty Out Your Pockets reveals the later stage one. So before getting into the lyrics, I need to explain the title because if you read it just as a phrase about robbery, then the meaning becomes shallow. As I interpret the song, the phrase means show me who you really are, show me what you are hiding, or reveal what you're hiding about yourself. So that's by empty out your pockets. Like, I want to see what you've got, type of thing. All right, so the first part of the song goes, empty out your pockets, I need all that. I get the millions, and then I fall back. They'll be chameleons, they'll change for some change. The days ain't the same, they'll switch for the fame. All right, so my interpretation of the song is, or at least of these lyrics, is that empty out your pockets is like a demand to reveal who you are. Once he gathers that information, he steps back and observes. And then through that observation, he sees people abandon their principles once they realize they can attach themselves to his success. The people who acted one way in the early days now instead reveal their true colors, so the days are not the same. People are chameleons and they'll change for some change and the days aren't the same. So from the song's perspective, success becomes a force that exposes what people were already carrying. At first, success looked like the answer because you wanted more visibility, more money, more proof, more people finally knowing who you are. After success arrives and everybody wants something from you, the next immediate question becomes, what did making it reveal about your relationships with others? It's just another form of the level 1 inadequacy. So Juice falls into the trap that is the primary mistaken conclusion in level 4. But later in the song, he raps, everybody doubted me, they ain't give me no help, so all this money in my pocket, I'm gonna spend it by myself. And this set of lyrics is particularly important to make this point. So the surface read is that they didn't help him, so he has decided he's going to hoard the rewards for himself. And from his perspective, that feels justified inside level 4 because at that point he had proven himself against everyone who failed to believe, support, recognize, or assist him. And the problem is the deeper mistake is the presumption that those people owed him anything in the first place. Now, this is where we're gonna get our first spiritual quote. And it's not like a huge one, but Eckhart Tolle is quoted as saying, "There's nothing to forgive." Heard him say this many times, and it's absolutely true. However, you can't fully understand that from inside level four, because everyone else still appears to be the external source of the conflict. However, once you get into the higher levels, you begin seeing that other people are merely reflecting back to you what you're holding internally. So, if you still believe you're insufficient and must prove yourself against everyone who doubts you, your relationships organize around opposition. Their doubt appears to be the problem, but it reflects the original belief that their recognition was needed to confirm your value. Juice interprets that reflection as something they did to him. He then uses the money to answer them. They withheld their support, so he will withhold the reward. But that keeps him organized around the same opposition. He defeated the doubters without dissolving the internal premise that produced a world full of doubters. This doesn't mean you have to trust, reward, or include everyone. It means that fighting the reflection cannot change what's being reflected. Like you can't like consider how ridiculous it would be to look in the mirror and then get mad at the reflection for not reflecting what you wanted it to look like. It's the same idea, just taken into a different mode of being. So the title turns back towards Jews. He empties everyone else's pockets and sees what his success exposed in them, but he failed to see the internal conflict in himself that produced that reflection in the first place. So level five begins when you stop organizing your choices around how others respond to or treat you, and instead begin acting according to your own integrity. So five is an odd number. Odd numbered levels are experiential levels. Level five begins the first new movement after in level four, where achievement failed to deliver what we thought it would give us. So level three was the effort to become your way out of insufficiency. Level four was the recognition that achievement did not resolve the thing driving the climb. Level five is the next form of effort, where you begin reorganizing your character around integrity instead of achievement, resentment, proof, or retaliation. Let me clarify here. This map is a map of my own interpretation of the levels themselves, and based on the fact that based on what I've already stated, that our experience on Earth is directed by the overlords who are service to self-directed. As for me, as I saw the map experientially, this was the first point where it became clear that service to others principles could override the existing structure. That doesn't mean that each level does not have its own STO angle and an STS angle. As I've said, this is my experiential interpretation. Later, I'll create a taxonomic map that respects that structure. What I can say is that the way I perceived it, I thought the songs NF, All I Have, and Dizzy Wright's Kill 'Em With Kindness explain this level very well. From the STS angle, I would point to that song Grimes, We Appreciate Power, as a pretty good STS description of the level. But for these purposes moving forward, we're only focusing on STO angles. So level five is where you begin organizing your life around the idea that there are right ways and wrong ways to live. And now, right and wrong doesn't mean to imply some sort of rigid moralism, social obedience, religious performance, or being some kind of do-gooder. It means that you recognize that the way you approach life and the way you respond to others has a quality in itself, and that quality determines who you are and what you become. Before getting into the lyrics, I want to say that one of the primary points of contention I have with most of the Eastern spiritual traditions is that they're all organized around wanting and desire as problematic. I have like a ton to say about this, why this is a mistaken conclusion, but that's outside the scope of this map and something I'll address in the future. What I will say about that here is I've approached the edge of level 13 and I still have ordinary wants. Wanting itself is totally natural human thing. It's when wanting is there because you believe having a thing will fill a void inside you. If that's why you're wanting, that's where the problem comes from. So the underlying motivation behind why you want something is what determines whether it's problematic or not. So that what I just said will start to make more sense as you listen to the rest of this. So let's move on to the lyrics. All right, so in this first part of NF's All I Have, it goes, all I ever wanted was somebody to hear me. All I ever wanted was somebody to feel me. And everybody want to tell me I'm out of my head when I'm on the mic. That's fine. That don't scare me. All right, so like I was saying, level five doesn't eliminate the ordinary desires. NF says he wants here. The difference is that he's no longer, or the difference is that he's not organizing himself around the belief that being heard will repair something inadequate inside him. Another thing I probably should point out is that we did another NF song in level two. And the thing is, even though this song was recorded, this song All I Have was recorded far earlier than the later the later NF Happy, it doesn't matter. You can experience different levels at different times of your life. You can be at a higher level at an earlier point in your life and then drop way down to the lower levels later based on new information. So you can like you know like it would be irrational to think that because he made a song that just that I could point to as level two, that doesn't mean that he couldn't make a song that also points to a higher level. The key lines in this first part were, everybody want to tell me that I'm out of my head when I'm on the mic. That's fine. That don't scare me. We saw in level four that Juice World responded to this by saying he's going to withhold sharing his success with those who doubted him. NF essentially says, I don't even care if you doubt me because the thing inside me is real and wants to be expressed. He wants his music to reach people because expression and connection genuinely matter to him, not because their approval would finally prove that he matters. So this is why I was trying to get into that little spiel at the start about desires. So the first level five movement, you can still want success, recognition, love, money, or even an audience, but instead of changing yourself according to whether those desires are fulfilled, you begin organizing yourself around what you recognize as the real essence within yourself. NF wants the world to receive him, and he's not willing to abandon himself if it does not. I don't live for the world, I live for the king. Wrote this with emotion. It's hard to get a break when the doors ain't open. It's hard to get a shot when the gun ain't loaded. It's hard to make a living when nobody want to notice. And then there's another part at the bottom, or toward later in the song, where he said in the chorus, he says, "Don't tell me this isn't real. Don't tell me this isn't how I feel. This is all I have." So the primary thing to understand about this is that all fidelity in the like what you can take from these lyrics, that all fidelity is being placed in the internal in his internal signal, and you can notice the refusal to allow others to define it for him. He still wants to be heard, but being heard is not what makes the signal legitimate. NF seems to intuitively understand this. The idea of integrity enters the picture here, because integrity begins when denying what is real inside you becomes a deeper violation than simply being misunderstood. And this song is full of gems, and I would encourage anybody to go listen to it and think about it. But I'm not trying to make this whole thing absurdly long, so I'm only going to include the other most significant part of the song. And in this part of the song, lyrics go, yeah, in the back of my mind thinking, am I wasting my time dreaming? And I ain't got no money in my wallet, but I guarantee there ain't no way that I'm gonna leave this. I need this. I swear to y'all, I need this. And this hip hop is in my veins. If you cut me, I'ma bleed it. All right, so this string of lyrics captures the central level five organization. He has doubts, he's lacking funds, but he goes so far as to guarantee that there's no way he will leave it because it is the thing most central to him that drives him forward. The line, if you cut me, I'ma bleed it, is the line that hits most centrally for me because it collapses the distance between who you are and what you express. Hip hop is not a means to an end for him. When everything, like when we were talking in level three about Eminem's "Lose Yourself," hip hop was the means to the end, and that was the point I was trying to get at there when I was saying that things might be different if he just made it about the art. So, getting back to this, when everything else is stripped away, the money, the fame, opportunity, even confidence, it's the art of expression itself that's so central to his essence of being that if you tried to cut him, he would bleed it. So the line captures an uncompromising fidelity what's actually real within you, even when everything in your experience appears to stand against it. The late stage level five song that I chose is Dizzy Wright's Kill 'Em With Kindness. NF gives the first half of the level, which says the inner thing is real and I cannot abandon it. Dizzy gives the second half, which says the field is distorted and I cannot let it turn me into distortion. And this song "Kill 'Em with Kindness," I'm a big fan of this song. I would go as far to call it the STO anthem, for reasons you'll start to understand. All right, so the song starts off with these lyrics: "Cautious with the image that I'm giving. What used to be appealing is now what I'm resenting. Feel like I ain't living. I'm dealing with so much. On the low, I'm acting tough, but I ain't been happy in a minute. And what's crazy is this is just the beginning, right around Vegas, trying to build my foundation. That immediate happiness is awaiting, but I feel it's overrated. I'm keeping a clear conscience. So I was saying that he's begun to distrust the level three things that used to motivate him, the image, the appeal, the immediate reward, and the performance of toughness. Now they now feel performative to him. He's realizing that a person can look like they're building a life while internally feeling misaligned, unhappy, and disconnected from what actually matters. And you can see clearly that this is very obviously a deeper understanding of the nature of experience that those in level three are not yet realizing. The level five movement is the shift from chasing what looks good to asking what kind of foundation, conscience, and character your pursuit creates. And a little bit later in the song, he has a couple lines that go, I just want to do my own thing, a good heart, but what if I'm out here fighting for the wrong things? And so in those lines, he's saying he still wants independence and still knows he's trying to do the right thing, but he's no longer willing to assume that good intentions automatically make the direction clean. He's thinking in terms of how those choices affect the consequences. The lyric illustrates a strong understanding of the common colloquialism that goes, "The road to hell is paved with good intentions," which essentially means that you can be trying to do the right thing and it can still lead you down the wrong path. And that's like why that colloquialism is so pervasive. I'll explain a little bit later. The important recognition here is that the underlying motivation behind why you want what you want and why you do what you do is more important than the wants or actions themselves. And if you compare this to what we were talking about in level three from Eminem's "Lose Yourself," where he was saying that that his soul was escaping through a gaping hole and he's trying to become king, and you could see that that was a mean like rap to him became a means to an end, but that's very different from what Dizzy is saying in these lines. The next part goes, because we just want to live our lives, embrace faith when against all odds. In our eyes, to judge others is not our job. To be a man is not that hard. We gonna kill them with kindness. When they try to take you out your comfort zone, it's time to be a man and understand we gonna kill them with kindness. And you know that you gotta hold your own. Can't let them take us away from the fam. We gonna kill them with kindness. That's the center of the song, those lines there. The line, you know, you got to hold your own itself is key because kill 'em with kindness can sound soft if it's heard from like lower vibrational levels. The phrase can sound like niceness, passivity, or moral performance, but that's not what the song is saying. The song says that the field will try to pull you away from your center. Experiences will test you, people will judge you, life will try to move you off your center and give you every seemingly rational excuse to lash out at the injustice of it all. The only way to maintain the STO path is to hold your own, to not let it take you away from the fam, or as I interpret it, to not let it take you away from what is important to you. That's not an easy thing to do. It's actually extremely difficult to remain in your own state when everything and everyone around you is offering justification for resentment, judgment, bitterness, superiority, or retaliation. It's probably the most difficult part of maintaining the STO path in general. What I can say about higher levels is you'll never reach them if you can't do this because, and I mean, you could if you take the STS path, I suppose, though that has like a lot of problems that we'll get into probably in a different talk down the line because I do want to do a map that also explains the STS ascent because it's also a real and legitimate path. Um, what I can say about the higher levels is you can't reach them if you can't do this because in the higher levels, if you react this way, the consequences can be dangerous and far-reaching. Remember, the spiritual journey is about learning discernment in order to wield greater amounts of power. And when you have these distortions, if you were granted this kind of power, you would create massive havoc in the world, in your own life and in the world. So let me move on to this last part of the song here. Can't control it. I'm unfolding the emotion that I'm holding. Hope the way I saw it ain't the way I want to approach it. I'm just focused on the better me. And then another part goes, release the need to be pleased or validated by eyes. In disguise, I'm just focused on what makes me come alive. So the need to please and be validated loses authority. When you get to this point, you turn toward what makes you come alive instead of what keeps you approved, defended, or recognized. And that links back directly back to the points that we showed that NF was making. NF says the inner thing is real enough that abandoning it would be self-betrayal. Dizzy says the outside field is distorted enough that letting it choose your state would also be self-betrayal. And those are the two halves of level 5. Remain faithful to the living thing inside you. Refuse to become the distortion surrounding you. So to explain why I earlier said Kill 'em with Kindness is the STO anthem. STO is the ability to remain oriented towards truth, conscience, and constructive action, while the field around you gives you every reason to collapse into resentment. Other people may act from envy, ignorance, selfishness, insecurity, projection, or distortion. That may all be true, but the STO move is refusing to identify with that as the ultimate truth. A distorted view of STO would presume it means to actually go out and be like a well-doer and help others. And I'm talking generally when I'm saying this. I'm not exactly addressing the song at this point. In many cases, to do that is it's actually an STS act, a selfish one, because it's done to make yourself feel better about yourself. It's often done to fill a void or a need to be seen as a good person. And I keep repeating this idea because it's really central to everything about how experience itself is organized. What matters most is the underlying motivation behind the reason for the choice or the action. So when I call this song the STO anthem, I mean the song captures the exact battle of early STO orientation. And just to be clear about this, I'm not saying like you should pretend that nobody wronged you. I'm saying that remaining self-contained in your orientation towards truth is the way, and that it can be exceedingly difficult to maintain that path because while trying to do that, life will give you every justification to lower yourself or turn to the STS path. And a note about forgiveness in general. Like a forgiveness is something that you do for yourself. It's not something you do for somebody else because if you don't forgive others, you end up holding grudges. And when you hold a grudge, most people have heard this idea of like you're letting somebody else live inside your head rent free. And it's more than just that. Like the grudge literally creates worse external circumstances for yourself, and it makes it more likely for future situations to manifest where you'll also manifest a grudge against someone. So, when I say like, yeah, I've been down this path and I've already like quite a long time ago, already chosen to just forgive everybody for everything they've ever done to me. That doesn't mean that like that my forgiveness means that I'm just gonna let them do it again or that I'm even letting them back into my life. It's just that like this was the past and my life isn't centered around what happened in the past. It's centered around what's happening right now. And what happened in the past doesn't matter anymore because right now is where my movement occurs. So I'm not gonna let something from back then dictate how I feel in this moment because how you feel is very important in terms of determining what you're going to be creating next. So NF says the inner signal is real and cannot be abandoned. Dizzy says the signal cannot degrade into the same distortion it notices externally. The movement to the next level happens when you realize that even integrity, right response, kindness, ambition, honesty, discipline, and moral clarity still do not fill the void or reveal ultimate truth. One last thing I'll add about this is that Dizzy's explanation about not allowing the distortion to degrade your signal is what allows your first glimpses of level 7. When you can maintain your center for long enough and avoid giving into distortion, this is what can allow you to break through to have some initial experiences of it. But until you learn the other distortions that keep pulling you out of it, you'll keep rising and falling. The recognition of level 6 is that nothing external can fill the insufficiency or inadequacy of the level 1 void and leads to the recognition that ultimate truth can only be found internally. This level, you're now trying to live rightly inside the world. You're trying to keep a clear conscience. You're trying to honor your personal inner signal and trying to respond cleanly to pressure, judgment, resentment, and distortion without engaging in further distortion yourself. All that stuff still matters, but none of it is the same as direct access to truth. It is the recognition that you've exhausted every external route and realized none of these things can bring you there. That's the collapse of external authority. This doesn't mean the external world becomes worthless. It means the external world loses the right to be treated as the source. The world can reflect, it can test, it can train, it can expose, it can mirror, it can show consequence, but it can't ultimately fulfill any emptiness inside you. Level 4 is where we got our first famous spiritual quote, and as we move forward level by level, we'll get to see exactly which levels more of these famous spiritual quotes were speaking from. And in that way, we can better understand them. The next famous quote that I really resonated with for a long time when I was stuck in level 6 was from Jiddu Krishnamurti, who said, "Truth is a pathless land." And that line belongs perfectly at what I'm calling level 6 because it collapses the authority of every external road. No institution, method, teacher, religion, achievement path, doctrine, status marker, moral identity, or spiritual group can reveal to you the truth. The Tao Te Ching opens with the same kind of a collapse from a different direction, saying the Tao that can be spoken is not the eternal Tao. Lao Tzu's famous quote has meaning on multiple levels. From level 6, it means the external object is already one step removed from the real thing. The moment the mind tries to capture truth as an object, it is no longer standing inside truth directly. Christ says a similar thing in another form when he said, "The kingdom of God is within you." The point is that the thing being sought is not finally located in an externally observable place. The search outward has to collapse before the inward doorway becomes obvious. This actually just gave me kind of a good idea for a future thing where I can take some of these quotes and then provide you the meaning from each different level so that it can start to be clear what I mean when I say that your access to like common sense understanding becomes greater as you rise. So my experience of level 6 differs the most from the taxonomic version that that I'll eventually create, mostly because level 7 is the first major change in orientation of experience. And I experienced level 6 for many years before finally being able to understand and capture level 7. I can only imagine most certainly that traversing from level 6 to level 7 will be the most complicated for nearly everyone. It will likely take much longer than any other level, even the higher ones, because it is where the most drastic change occurs. The taxonomic version will not point to the songs I'm using here. Songs I'm using here are more so about trying to understand the shift from 6 to 7, as I think it will be way more helpful for most people to understand it this way. The first level 6 song I'm using is Ellie Goulding's Lights because it explains what it is like first glimpsing level 7. The lyric goes, "I had a way then, losing it all on my own. I had a heart then, but that queen has been overthrown. And I'm not sleeping now, the dark is too hard to beat, and I'm not keeping now the strength I need to push me." He's saying that at one point she had a way of living, which I read that to mean um, she had found level 7, but then lost it without anyone to guide her back. She also once had a heart, which I interpret to mean a living center from which she operated. But that queen, the former governing center of her life, has been overthrown. Her glimpse of home, and when we say the word home, we're referring to Samadhi, level 7. Her glimpse of home revealed that the old orientation could not take her there, yet she has not yet learned how to stabilize the new one. Then, because she lost the new way, while also being unable to return to the old one, she cannot sleep. The darkness of this in-between period is now too difficult to tolerate. She's not yet learned how to retain the strength needed to pull herself back into level 7. So when I was saying earlier that you'll fall back to level 1 in between this move from 6 to 7, this is sort of what I was talking about. Because your old way of relating to the world and of living, you can't go back to it once you realize this collapse of external authority. But you can't you also still are not yet ready to live within like regularly inside samadhi. So you get to be in this in between period. I was there for a number of years myself, so that's why I was saying like it's definitely the hardest move to make, the most difficult. Um, and I can relate to these lyrics so well that I mean it almost to me sounds like a perfect explanation of what it's like. And I have little doubt that others will refer to this as what people call the dark night of the soul. However, the dark night thing that can encompass much more than just this. I'll talk more about the dark night in the future, but that was just a comment I thought would resonate with people. So now should be the place I mentioned that level 6 is the stage just prior to what the Zen referred to as samadhi. And samadhi is going to be a very central concept. The 13th vibrational level is what people refer to as Christ consciousness, and 7 is crossing the halfway point towards that. The best piece of advice I have for anyone who's at this point is to look at what the Zen called ox herding. I'm not going to go in depth about it here, but what I can tell you is that the ox herding metaphor, it's already mapped out the process very precisely as I experienced it. So I'm just suggesting that to those in this period as a reference. So let's move to the next part of the song. Chorus goes, "You show the lights that stop me from turning to stone. You shine it when I'm alone. And so I tell myself that I'll be strong and dreaming when they're gone because they're calling me home." So the lights are temporary returns of the level 7 orientation she lost. They stop her from turning to stone within the darkness and restore the strength she said she could no longer keep. The lights don't remain. When they disappear, she tells herself she'll be strong and continue dreaming of them, attempting to preserve the strength they gave her until they return. The lights calling her home means she already recognizes level 7 as where she belongs. She can still receive its light and carry some of its strength to the darkness, but she cannot yet remain there. In level 6, you've seen enough to know the external cannot provide the answer, but you're not yet consistently inside the direct knowing of truth. So the true state comes as flashes and glimpses. Many people throughout their lives have had glimpses of this state, and many have mistakenly called it enlightenment, which I'll get in more into that when we discuss level 7 and 8. The key thing about level 6 is that recognizing the external can't supply you with the truth, and learning to regularly inhabit level 7 is not an instant recognition. You can know the external world won't get you there while still not yet regularly inhabiting level 7. It's different from how in level 2 you can recognize that the powerless of level 1 might be overcome by action, and then level 3 leads directly into action. When the external can't give you the answer, finding the way becomes complicated. And when in between these states, it's easy to fall into despair because it seems there's no way. Like it seems like you're stuck between a rock and a hard place. You can't go this way, and you're not sure how to go this way. So the point I'm illustrating is that the jump here is it's not the same between this level 6 to 7. The 6 to 7 jump is way different from any of these other ones. Even like 7 to 8 and 8 to 9 and 9 to 10, the jumps are way easier. So personally, when I was going through this, I had held level like the first time I got into level 7, I was there for quite a while. Then I bounced back down to 6, and then between 6 and 7, and then all the way back down to 1. Eventually, once I finally like kind of gave up and just got like I let it get to me too much. Um, and what anybody going through something like that, like I can empathize because I know exactly what that's like, and I spent a lot of time back in level 1. I was in level 1 after I had seen level 7. I was back into level 1 for like more than a year, to the point where I'd even forgot about all this stuff. I didn't even remember many of these things, and it was only like the second time that I decided to like climb back up the rungs that finally I was able to put these pieces back together. I don't have many more songs for the higher levels because they're outside normal states of access that the majority of artists inhabit. So I'll have to turn to more spiritual quotes to explain them. However, what I can say is that as you see here, the lyrics become almost exact and specific when interpreted through the proper lens. There'll be a few more songs where that'll be explicitly clear. The fact of the matter is, while these levels can be conceptually clear as distinct, you can still occupy multiple different levels at the same time. It's especially true when you realize that every domain is separate. You can inhabit level 7 if you have mastered a particular field and inhabit it while partaking in action associated with it, but then in a different domain not have that same mastery and fumble your way out of it. There's a massive overlap between levels, and it's not always clear what level you're in. The reason I can even know that these levels exist and are real has to do with the fact that when I experienced level 7, 9, 10, and 11, my experience of reality shifted drastically from one to the other. And I'll describe that when we get there. I just wanted to give this background so that will be clear. Um, the other thing that I'll quickly say is that when we're talking about samadhi, you can just interpret that as meaning like the flow state, or when somebody says they're in the zone. It's the same thing. It's just a matter of like living from that state regularly. That's what samadhi is. So the second level 6 song is also very similar and explicitly exact. It will tell a similar story, but from a different perspective, and it includes other key material that will be crucial for anyone to know when finally crossing into level 7. And that song is MGK's Home, where Ellie gives level 6 as flashes of home breaking through separation. MGK gives the same level as the conscious exhaustion of trying to get back there. You've already climbed through struggle, effort, collapse, reorientation, and inner correction. The state you are seeking remains elusive enough that the closeness itself becomes painful. When falling out and trying to find my own way back in the song, it actually gave me like a lot of strength to pick myself up and not let the distortions of the world and the confusions of turning stone define me. The first verse of this song goes, "Look, I didn't power through the struggle just to let a little trouble knock me out of my position and interrupt the vision. After everything I witnessed, after all these decisions, all these miles, feet, inches, they can't add it to the distance that I have been through just to get to a place where even if there's no closure, I'm still safe. I still ache from trying to keep pace. Somebody give me a sign. I'm starting to lose faith. Now tell me, how did all my dreams turn to nightmares? How did I lose it when I was right there? Now I'm so far that it feels like it's all gone to pieces. Tell me why the world never fights fair. I'm trying to find home." Interestingly, both Ellie Goulding and MGK use the term home to describe the state. And there's a specific reason for that. I would say that because anybody who's experienced it uh, can easily relate to that being obvious description of it. So that verse gave a pretty precise definition of the struggle of level six, because you've gotten to a point where you've been close enough to remember home, but still are very far from the state from the stabilization within it that you keep trying to maintain. Also, you can see the lower levels are still bleeding into the process here, because ascension is rarely, it's not a clean staircase where one level disappears the moment the next one begins. You can reach higher, touch the state, fall back down, then have to reintegrate everything that happened before the next step becomes available. That's actually like generally the way that the whole process happens. The first time that I ascended up to level 11, that was the highest I had gone, and then I fell back down, and then I didn't have a clue what happened to me. And I had to go through the process of like reintegrating everything that happened and sort of like trying to understand what was happening, and the whole result of that is this map. So back to the song. The earlier lines about dreams, the later lines about dreams becoming nightmares and losing it when he was right there and the world not fighting fair are so accurate that they could be a placeholder for my own attempt to describe the agitation, infuriation, and frustration with the process. Those aren't purely level six realizations by themselves because they carry the pain of lower levels back into the picture, but that is exactly how the process actually works. When you get close to maintaining level 7 and fall back out of it, the descent can make the whole journey feel like cruel, irrational, and impossible to trust. You were right there, then suddenly you're not, and the mind starts trying to understand how something that felt so real could become inaccessible again without any clear explanation. And then there can, like for me, like there was a lot of anger towards like reality, and even resentment towards like reality and like towards God, just because like I felt that it was like unnecessarily cruel and to 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 subject me to that. So let's get to the next part of the song. This part goes, "So I gotta make it back, but my home ain't on the map. Gotta follow what I'm feeling to discover where it's at. I need the memory in case this fate is forever, just to be sure these last days are better. And if I have any enemies, to give me the strength to look the devil in the face and make it home safe." These few lines add significant depth, and no one would ever know if they hadn't actually traversed these levels and then tried to explain them to someone later. The song just describes it perfectly. Home is not an external place on a map. We've already established that. You have to follow what you're feeling to discover where it's at, adds the next piece. We can infer from NF's All I Have to point to what the inner feeling that you must follow is. It's the thing that you know to be true at the very core of your essence about yourself, regardless of what anybody else tries to tell you. The devil line is what makes this song so strangely accurate. In Zen, this is exactly a thing that they call makyo, Makyo. In Zen terms, its meaning is something like strange, intense, or misleading experiences that can arise during deep meditation and at the threshold of samadhi. Literally, it is treated as meaning something along the lines of realm of demons. And now I'm saying this is so specific because this happened to me on both ascents. That's how I can know that it's a central aspect to the journey itself. And the fact that the Zen even had an entire name for it just further solidifies its significance. So after ordinary authorities has collapsed, like institutions, teachers, doctrines, achievement paths, an apparent spiritual intelligence will present itself because it appears to come from beyond ordinary reality. You may trust it more completely than any authority you previously rejected. This might get a little bit heavy, but hopefully not too much. Um, what Makio means is when you finally do cross the level 7 threshold, you're literally going to come face to face with a demon or multiple demons. So on my first ascent, they presented themselves as helpful spirits. The first time I had this experience, I was like exceedingly naive. I was just open to anything because at a point where I was unwilling to listen to anything that anybody out there said, and I was super open to the spirit realm. And I strongly advise against being against this because when you do that, you're just going to get taken advantage of. If these things could have harmed me, they probably would have. The thing is, once you realize that all they can really do is trick you or scare you, it's easy to make it home safe. So I'm going to conclude this as the end of the first full part. Level 7 will begin in part 2, and part 2 will take us all the way up to level 13. Um, and then after that, I'll probably do the taxonomic version so that you can see why the way that I've described it maps so perfectly onto basic fundamental aspects of reality. And then after that, what I can do is create a discussion where I'm using those understandings to make inferences about what it's like levels 14 through 21. So what I can say, so as far as like the path from level 7 to level 13, what I can say about that for now is because of what I've referred to as like bleed through of different levels, I can't be completely certain in terms of some realizations. Like what I mean is like which are level 12 and which are 13. I can say personally that I was certain that I was at the threshold of level 13 and I was just unwilling to cross it. Um, from from the vantage point that I had, it looked like standing on the edge of a cliff and being asked to like jump off, which that's a metaphor. Obviously, I don't mean that like in a literal sense, but in the sense of like identity. So, I mean, that's a metaphor. I'll explain further when we get to that point. But let me just say, like the spiritual journey, I don't recommend anyone rush through it, and I don't recommend anyone try to force themselves to ascend. Mostly because you're not going to like what you see once you get to these higher levels. They can be extremely destabilizing and could potentially cause you to lose your mind. They're very isolating places to be because you can no longer interact with others in the same way, and the burden of responsibility becomes very heavy. That the higher that you climb, your life eventually seems to no longer become your own exactly. So that's gonna be it for this first part of the series, and then the next will be coming out in time.